Welcome to the What I Meant to Say podcast. I'm your host, Wendy Jones, founder of Be Better Media and a mom of four, passionate about human connection. Some of these stories contain sensitive content about real life events, and all of the information in this podcast and from anywhere on the Be Better Media website is for informational purposes only. If you find that you need help, which we all do from time to time, please reach out to a licensed professional for help. I enjoyed this conversation with Marc Paisant so much. Marc is a husband, father, and passionate podcast host himself. In his podcast, Relatively Normal, he opens up about his own mental health and well-being journey. I love how we got to break down that wisdom on parenting, nutrition, and so much more in this conversation. He has a way of approaching life struggles that easily translates for others, and his desire to normalize the conversation about mental health is one that is close to my heart as well. I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as I did. I am so excited today to be joining Marc Paisant. He is former collegiate athlete and podcast host himself, and excited to dig in on mental health and physical health and the connection there, and everything that you do to add to that space. So thanks for joining me today, Marc.
Thank you so much for having me. It's really my pleasure. I really enjoy the little bit of the episodes that I've listened to yours. I really enjoyed them. So thank you for what you're doing. So I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. I always like to get a little bit of background, just kind of on, a few of the things from your early life that maybe you would connect to what you're doing today. So, from sports to where you grew up, can you just give me a little background on where you came from?
Yes. So with the name Paisant being French, most people will be correct that I was born in New Orleans, and most of the Paisant clan are in New Orleans. And when I was young, when I was 4, I have a twin brother and an older sister. We all moved from New Orleans to Atlanta and kind of did the whole suburban Black family life in Atlanta. A lot of the stuff I did growing up was the first for, my family, the Black family in America. And, we were the first Black family in our neighborhood. My family was the first Black family to have all 3 of their kids graduate from college. And we had a really good upbringing. Like my brother and I were really close. We played soccer and basketball. We had an older sister who was the protector, and she still acts that way. Dad was the breadwinner, and he went into the office every day and came home. And my mom, when she did work, she worked later. She stayed home with my brother and I, and we kind of were a really close-knit family. We talked a lot. We just grew up in a time that you went out and rode your bike every day. You went out and play with your friends every day. And then as my brother and I got older, we went to college. I went to Clemson. He went to the Naval Academy. He is still in the Navy. We found a lot out about ourselves that, we were twins, but there's a lot of things we like differently. And he was my brother, who was the younger one by 17 minutes, which I know people are like, wow, that's a long time.
Yeah.
Yes. If you were just to see us interact when we were younger, you would always think he was the older one. And he was more mature. I'm just happy-go-lucky, silly, not a care in the world. I'm here to make you smile. It just, nothing really affected me. And the weird thing about that, looking back, is I used humor when I was young to really mask insecurities, really mask them. And from physical insecurities to mental insecurities to, just having to be compared to my brother all the time. And I know other brothers and other twins and other siblings feel that way.
Yeah.
And so, but I was able still to be successful. I went to play soccer at Clemson. I met my future wife at Clemson, and, we built a family together, and we're now here outside of Atlanta, just doing our best to raise two crazy girls in this crazy world we live in.
Amen. How old are your girls?
So Aaliyah's the oldest one. She is 8, about to be 9. We were just talking about it today because we have to get a birthday party together in December, and it's like,
Oh yeah,
another
I'm a December
another
birthday. What day?
December 2nd.
Second.
So, yep.
Yeah, those
And then,
Christmas birthdays. Love
yes.
it.
And then Jazzy or Jasmine, we call her Jazzy. She just turned 8 in April. So I have an April birthday. My wife has April birthday. Jazz is April birthday. And then Aaliyah is our December baby.
Beautiful. When going back to your brother and having a twin, what are some of those things that when you say that, you were trying to catch up or mask or be different, what were some of those things about him that you saw that maybe caused you to want to set yourself apart?
Yeah, when I say we're twins, we're fraternal. So
Yeah.
it's might as well be just brothers, just born at the same time, but we're not identical. And we always had differences physically. You can tell we're brothers, but we look different.
Yeah.
And one of the things is that he still has a full head of hair, and I started losing my hair as a teenager, which
Oh
was
wow.
one of the things that I was very insecure about. But I just at 18, I'm just like, all right, it's all coming off, and which actually worked for me, which I'm cool
Yeah.
with that.
Okay.
Um, and he uh, for our entire childhood, he got more attention from the opposite sex. He was Michael is just a brilliant person. Like he 4.0 GPA, and he's a commander in the Navy. He's had his own ship in the Navy. In high school, he just had this confidence about him that I never picked up, I never got. And it was, there were times when just because Michael would make better grades than me, that he would get some things that I wouldn't get at home. And looking back, it's like, okay, yeah, I definitely understand that. But at the same time, when I was in high school, and now to this day, like I take medication for ADHD, and it's totally changed my life. And there was a teacher in high school. It's like, hey, talk to my parents. Like, Mark has a an issue focusing, an issue staying on task in class, and I just think you might want to have a doctor check him for ADHD. And to all the people who were born to Black mothers back in the 80s and 90s, y'all remember, nothing's wrong with my baby. Nothing's wrong with him. Like, he just needs to apply himself. And it's like, okay, like I think I am applying myself, but I don't know if I'm reaching my potential. But that was never on my brother. Like, it was always on like a teacher who would compare us. Like, when he would come back from school to visit, they'd be like, oh, which one of you is in the Navy? And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
it's not me. So,
And here you are, though, you're a collegiate athlete. I mean, that's in itself a really difficult place. So that sense of comparison and not measuring up, it kind of goes to show you that like that can be something that affects everybody. I mean,
yep.
Obviously, like if you were coming through the ranks and you had this, stable home and a value system that was being instilled, and we all encounter these, whatever it is that we're born with, right? And everybody to some extent is born with something, but just the way those challenges get framed and the way that then they then affect our lives. I mean, it happens at every echelon of society, right? I mean, so how, when it comes to sports and school and confidence, like how do you think you got to be a collegiate athlete? When it's interesting to hear you say you struggled with with confidence or didn't have the confidence of your brother, but to get to become a collegiate athlete, how do you reconcile that?
Yeah, so just so everybody knows, I was in high school and before college, I played basketball and soccer, and I was a goalkeeper in soccer, and I played every position in basketball in high school from the 1 to the 5. Right, basically whatever my team wanted or needed, I should say. And you would think, hearing that out loud, you're like, oh, he's tall. He was, at that time 6'5", in the 90s, you're playing a forward or a center, which is unfortunate. Now if you're 6'5", you better be able to shoot the ball.
Yeah. Totally.
So but And you would think, hearing just that part, you're like, oh, this guy, he has the world in front of him. Like he's going to be awesome, but he's going to be set. But it took a while for the goalkeeper position to like really stick with me through as an early teen. My brother and I both played in the field in soccer, and he excelled faster than I did. He got the positions faster than I did. He was faster than me. He was stronger than me. And he got looked at. He went up from, at that time, there was rec Premier Classic. He moved up faster than me.
Okay.
And, just one day a coach is like, hey, we're getting beat by so much. Is anybody you want to play goal? And I was like, I'll do it. I don't care. And I ended up having a pretty good game. And this was like, I don't know if it was like 11, 12 years old, which is really, really late for a goalkeeper to start. But I started, getting better at the position, learning the position. Had a coach that really sent me down. Just a toxic coach, and I don't remember his name. And
what were some of those qualities in that coach?
Well, think of it this way. So you have 11 and 12-year-olds, and at one practice in front of everyone on the team, he told him he was going to help change me so I wasn't the worst goalkeeper in the world. He told that to a 12-year-old.
Oh my gosh.
And for someone who is 12, I had thick skin outwardly. I mean, I would smile and be like, "Oh, haha, yeah, coach." But inside, I'm 43 now. At 30 years, I still remember that.
Yeah.
So, one season, I had a coach who was really confident. Coach Cook, Michael Cook. He was just a really nice man, really smart soccer mind, who just let me be. He got me. He was the first coach to actually get me a goalkeeper coach. He was the first coach to actually specify the training that I needed to send me to camps to be a goalkeeper, who actually invested time and money into my position. And something just clicked that summer. And by junior and senior year in high school in Atlanta, I was the best goalkeeper in the state. And the basketball side of it, my brother was injured 2 of the 4 seasons we played varsity in high school. So he didn't get to excel like I did in basketball. However, soccer was always our first. Like, we loved soccer. Like, we could not wait to watch it. We couldn't wait for the World Cup. We loved watching it. And so I gained this cocky confidence as a senior in high school, like leather jacket, the cute girlfriend, walking around campus. I'm feeling good about myself. And I get to Clemson, and it's like, all right, you're not the man anymore. Like, all these dudes were the man, like every one of them. And I was like, I wasn't prepared. Like, I wasn't prepared for that, to be thrown into that big pond again.
Yeah.
And that's when that's when I first noticed things were manifesting in my mind that I'm like, this can't be, like, everyone can't think like this. Like, this can't be in everyone's head. So that's when I went to therapy as a freshman.
Wow, that's a high level of realization.
Yeah. And no one told me. Yeah, it was crazy how I just went to therapy.
Yeah. Do you remember what some of the specific, when you say, like, not everybody could be thinking like this, do you remember some of the clarity of those thoughts?
Mm-hmm. One, I did not want to go to sleep. I did not want to, I felt like I just had to be up. And then when I went to sleep, I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to interact with people. And again, remember, I'm a really outgoing person, really happy-go-lucky. Didn't want to interact with anybody. I didn't want to play soccer. I didn't want to be on this. I got a lot of anxiety just preparing for practice. Like, I did everything. I had every injury. I did everything to not practice.
Wow.
And looking back, like, if I had really invested in my freshman year, which I was redshirted, I invested in my freshman year, I had 2 All-American goalkeepers in front of me. And if I had invested and actually worked with them, become friends with them, like, really looked at what they were doing, I could have really improved. I had my goalkeeper coach, who is now, the athletic director over at, I think it's George Mason in
Oh yeah.
Buffalo.
Yeah,
Oh,
my son has one of the boys off. My son plays college volleyball, and a friend from his club team plays at George Mason.
yeah.
So, yeah,
So, Todd Bramble, and absolutely, he was the women's soccer coach there. Absolutely wonderful individual. Like, such a good coach. Like,
yeah,
such a good coach. And I'm letting all of this just pass in front of me.
mm,
And I was so invested in soccer. I was so invested in sports. I was so invested in my teammates. And in a course of 3 months, 4 months, I want nothing to do with it. And I'm like, something, like, it couldn't go south this quickly with me.
right.
So I just walked into our health facility and I said, I think I'm depressed. I need to speak to somebody. And I can't, again, I cannot tell you like what made me do that per se,
Mm-hmm.
but I felt something I needed to do something with my mental health at that point.
Yeah, and did you get some relief from
I
that
did.
experience?
Oh, it was, I couldn't have gotten like a nicer, gentler individual who, it was the first time in my life where I was like, oh, like, he's just listening to me. He's not judging me.
Yeah.
As much as I like to joke, like, if I would tell my teammate or tell somebody at school or tell a coach, again, remember, all males, like,
Mm-hmm.
all problem solvers. It's like, I don't need you to solve this problem. And of course,
Yeah.
I got this talking to early years in my marriage where I did not have to solve my wife's problems. I just had to listen to her.
Yep, that
Uh,
comes up, doesn't it?
yes, it
For
does.
sure.
It's like, oh, Mark, well, you know what? You just need some time. You'll get over it. Like, oh, everybody feel like, listen, I don't need the cliche responses right now. Like, I need some help from a professional who knows some coping mechanisms and can check up on me, and we can be intentional about how I can help myself and how I can help others.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my and I talk about this in one of my first episodes of my podcast, my therapy journey. And it's funny, I later on in that first season, I had my college roommate on with me, who, no one knew anything about this. The only person that knew I was in therapy was Todd Bramble, my coach, because one of my sessions was during a morning session. I left 30 minutes early. And usually guys leave 30 minutes early to go to rehab, or go to get a knee checked on. But one
Sure.
day, I was just like, hey, coach, I got to go. Got a doctor's appointment. And he had noticed it was like the second or third one I missed in a row. And he's like, Paisant, like, what, where are you going? And really quietly, I was like, I have a therapy appointment. And he's like, and it immediately clicked for him.
Okay.
And he
So
was
the
like,
positive reinforcement.
yeah,
He
he was
understood.
like, he's like, all right, yeah, go ahead and go. And
Yeah,
again, those are little things in your life you just don't forget when people do those things for you.
absolutely. And as we know, like there's such a mental health crisis among student athletes nowadays, but that was
Yes.
very cutting edge for
Mm-hmm.
90s.
Yep.
You know what I mean? That I don't remember this conversation, as
Right.
I graduated from college in
Mm-hmm.
96, and
Mm-hmm.
it just is, it's such a different, but I will say I didn't encounter therapy till later in my life. And the first time I walked out, I was like, oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh,
Yep.
I think I just lost 20 pounds. I mean, just from that clarity of having a good listener, like you said.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And
yeah.
and there's a reason I told my goalkeeper coach and not my head coach. And um, and not to say anything, bad about Coach Adair, and may he rest in peace. We lost him a few years ago, but he and he, we had conversations afterwards. He was one of those really rock hard, like, go
Okay.
all out, like, I don't care about your feelings type coach. And we butted heads. Like, he did not like the fact that I really, like, don't get me wrong, I played hard and I enjoyed my time, but it's like nothing really brought me down. Like I did everything to keep myself up, and I wasn't going to let a game like
Yeah,
it sounds terrible. Soccer wasn't a priority in my life. My
yeah,
life was my priority, so
which
yeah.
honestly is I can see how obviously how you got into this mental
Mhm.
health space, because that's not a typical, life is not all sports, right? And so
Right.
often we hear about athletes and their identity, the identity that we have wrapped up in
Right.
being that athlete. But when we can see the lessons that we learn from sports that play out in our bigger life, I think, for our life story as a whole,
Mhm.
we're actually far more served by our sport,
I
right?
I no, I totally agree. And I'm trying to like there's a reason why so many youth athletes at age 16 are quitting their sport.
Mm.
There's a reason, and that's not like hyperbole from me. There's like data and science that backs it up that at
Yeah.
alarming rates kids are deciding that I don't want to be a part of this game anymore. And it's because there's too much pressure, there's too much specification on sports. And that's kind of what I hit in college, because I'll give you an example. And the reason I had my roommate sophomore year through senior year is because both of us came to each other after our freshman year. It was like, hey, I don't really want to talk about soccer all day. He's like, oh, I don't want to talk about soccer all day either. It's like, I don't want to live with other college soccer players. I don't want to live with college. All right, let's live together and get random roommates. And we did that. And we just couldn't take, like, we were at soccer on the field all the time. Like,
Yeah.
we were watching video all the time. And like, when I left soccer, when I left the training facility, I wanted to be a student. Like, I wanted
Yeah.
to enjoy college. And my sophomore year, we lose to Indiana in the Elite Eight, 2-1 at Clemson. We were number one seed. They were 8 seed. They should have been higher, but it is what it is. And it's November, December when we're like, and so we win the ACC championship, and we lose to Indiana 2-1. It's a Sunday afternoon game. We're like, okay, we're all going to have a party and kind of just relax afterwards. My teammates have the VHS of the game and they're watching it at the party, and I'm just like, the season's like, guys,
Yeah.
take some time, like this. And so I got there and I was like, no, there's no way in hell that I'm staying here. Like, I don't want. Why are you reliving this now? Just, I understand we're hurt. I understand we want to go to the Final Four. Like, I understand all that stuff. But there's life around you that you're missing because you're living in a game we played 3 hours ago. And that was who I am. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, you're a big picture guy. I can tell that.
Yes. Yes.
Definitely. And you're also hitting on that EQ that as I listen to some of your podcasts and, understanding the importance through coaching of really how important having a high EQ is, um, for,
Yeah.
just establishing ourselves as people in the world and how we relate to other people, how we form our relationships. And I'm wondering how in your coaching life, how do you relate that EQ to the people that you help?
So my oldest daughter, who just she's my mini me. Like, she wants every hoodie I have, every pair of shoes. She wants, she's a goalkeeper too. It's like, this is my little, and it's adorable. It really is. And she, like, something's starting to click with her in soccer. But the only thing we really talk about is the choices that she makes. And she suffers from, childhood ADHD. And we've had a lot of conversations, and we've talked to her teachers and talked to her pediatrician. And, in women, it manifests differently than it does in boys. Like, there's not really the hyperactivity part, but there's the impulse part.
Mm-hmm.
So she's having a lot of issues, not say a lot of issues, but she's having issues sometimes with her impulse control. And she wants to just do something immediate because she wants it or whatever.
Right.
So we really don't talk about her, her skill level. We don't talk about what she can do better on the field. We don't talk about what kind of teammate she is. All we talk about, me and her, are the choices that she makes and the opportunity she has to control those choices. Because she'll have an impulse that she just wants to, punt the ball, into a group of girls and think it's funny.
Yep.
Or she'll have an impulse to, jump on a girl's back as they're supposed to be listening to me and the other coach. And, none of these things that she's doing is quote unquote like a bad thing to do. Like she's 8, she's 8, she's enjoying
Right.
her life, but, talking to her, she wants to be really good at sports. So when we have conversations, it's like, hey, tell me why you decided to do that. And a lot of the times she won't have an answer. So that tells me and tells her that it was just an impulse that I just wanted to do that. And so we talk about, hey, listen, how your brain is configured, like you're going to have these impulses. You're going to say, hey, I want to just kick my friend's ball away so it rolls down the hill and laugh about it, or I'm not going to listen. Like, I'm just going to run across the field while they're doing a drill. Like, but I was like, Daddy goes through the same things you do, but I understand that I get to control what I do. Like my brain might tell me, hey, do this, it'll be really fun. Or my brain might tell me I'm in trouble because Daddy pulled me out of the game and I must have been doing something wrong, so I'm going to sulk the rest of the game. I was like, you know what? I bet both of them are my strong girls. That's what I call them, my strong girls, because I understand that you can control how you feel and what you think right now and control the decisions that you make. And and people might be listening and saying that's kind of a hard discussion for an 8-year-old. And I might agree with you, but it's working for us because like we have to continually talk about why she decided to do the things she does and making the correct choices in life. And it starts from like, hey, a little choice, like, hey, what made you decide to take this toy to school when your teacher told you not to? And that could turn into, hey, when I'm an adult, what makes me decide to take this job versus the other, or follow this person to another? Like, I'm trying to start early, because what her pediatrician told us is that this is something you have to be intentional about, because with ADHD in girl or women, she might get her first car at 16 and think there's nothing going to happen to me if I run this red light, or if I speed, nothing's going to happen to me. Or if I decide to like try my first drink, underage and get in the car, like we have to really be intentional.
Hey, I hope you're enjoying this chat as much as I am. For more great content, courses, and lifestyle, go to bebettermedia.tv. Yeah. And that matters so much more. I mean, you're hitting on the big life stuff. I've always told my kids, I'm like, there's a lot of little choices. They add up to the big ones. And there are some big ones that change the course of your life, or put you in extreme danger. And as parents, like, we can watch them make little mistakes and let that be their roadmap of, how they learn, as difficult as that is. But that consistency message is huge. And, for athletics and life, right? I mean, success is consistency, that long-term success is like how we show up day after day after day. And it's so cool to hear how you're normalizing that conversation with an 8-year-old, because they are really, as difficult, as a high level as that sounds, what I've come to understand is that like they really are capable, much more capable than sometimes we give them credit for,
Oh yeah. And and the thing they hear all the time from me, what you just mentioned, is like when they start to play and get their space and they start to leave little things out. And the thing I tell them probably 1,000 times in their life is little messes become big messes. So clean it up right now before it becomes huge. And it's the same thing you said, like these little decisions we're making now, it's that repetition in the brain. It's putting the decision-making in their brain. And it's like, okay, my friend's going to this party and there's going to be, possibly drinking or, alcohol or drugs there. I'm going to make the right decision. It's that little thing, those little things right now. And you're absolutely right. Success is consistency. Like, and I never knew that, like in my 20s,
Amen. Yeah, that has definitely been a later lesson in life,
Mm-hmm.
Thing for me. And I as I look back, I'm like, okay, I'm a pretty routine person. I
Mm-hmm.
understand, but it's like those things that you do time after time. And when you realize like, oh, those in your 30s, 40s, 50s
Mm-hmm.
become the things you don't even have to think about
Right.
anymore. Right. It's like,
Absolutely.
I'm not picking up a workout routine in my 40s. I've been doing this for so long. It's just the first thing I want to do in the morning. Right.
Right.
And so, but that normalization of that ADHD conversation is, I think that's so important because it is really prevalent out there these,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't know if that's more because we have ways to recognize it,
Mm-hmm.
easier and earlier than maybe in our generation.
Right.
But also just with the advent of, social media and, instant gratification being even more present. And when you pair instant gratification culture with ADHD, I mean, that is that's a difficult
Yeah.
combination. So, how do you, and I know your girls they're still relatively young, but
Mm-hmm.
do you see any correlation between, what kids are facing today and some of these mental health challenges that are out there, from
Well,
anxiety, depression, focus, all of these things?
I've kind of learned this, and again, like like to tell people on my show, like I'm not a doctor, not a therapist, and not even a data analyst or a behavioral science, anything like that.
Yeah.
But um, I'm under the thought process that regardless of what generation we're talking about, regardless of whose kids we're talking about, there's going to be something that their generation has that's unique to their like impulse control and their behavioral, idiosyncrasies. I'm not going to call them behavioral issues, just the things, the normalization of what they're doing. And as my generation, as our generation got older, we, I guess they consider me and us that little mini generation of Xenials that didn't grow up with electronics and social media, but we had it in college and in our adulthood.
Right.
So it's like we kind of got the social media when our brains were more developed and we can make better decisions, even though some of us don't make better decisions.
Yeah.
But, but, you know, with my kids, I've noticed that there is that constant need for something in front of their face. And whether that be these god awful YouTube channels that are just, and I'm sorry, I apologize. I shouldn't judge like that. But my wife and I listen in the background and we're like, what are you watching? They're just, and of course it's this family who's like doing these like really cheesy stories and they're really bad actors, but my girls are just like glued to it. And they go back to the room and take one of their tablets and they record themselves doing the same thing. And it's like, okay, I kind of like that. I kind of like that part of it. That's kind of cool.
Sure.
But at the same time, it's, when I say, hey, it's time to come eat dinner, and one of them is like bringing the tablet to put it in front of them where I eat, and it's like, oh no, I don't, no, we're not, like, you're not stuck to that thing.
Yeah.
And I really believe that regardless of what they're having right now, like my girls are gonna be having the same conversation with someone like you when they're an adult. Yeah. Oh, can you so such and such kid has the microchip in their finger, and we don't know if it's like it's gonna be something is gonna be out there.
No, I totally agree with you. And I was fascinated the other day having a conversation with my 15-year-old, and he rattles off the word dopamine and understands what it is. And I'm like, okay, at 15, I did not know what dopamine was.
Right.
So for all the challenges that they're facing, there is also a conversation going on out there that has a level of awareness that I didn't have at that age. So I was like, okay, well, maybe if there is a general awareness, we can start to work with that, because, the social media and the iPhone are not going away. Right. So how do we normalize that conversation and then, put some boundaries around it? And when you say the iPad's not coming to the table, in some ways does that tie back, if you look back on your childhood, does that tie back to some of the values that maybe your parents
Oh yeah.
set up? So regardless of what we're dealing with, like you're saying, there's an underlying value system that we can always promote. Right.
It is amazing to me how much I've turned into my dad. I never thought that would happen. It's amazing. And even like my brother says it, my sister-in-law says it, my sister says it, my wife says it, and it's when you find, like, I love my dad to death. Like we have a great relationship. We've had the best relationship since I've been an adult, that I ever had with him. And I probably don't tell him enough, like, thank you, like all the stuff he did for me, all the stuff he taught me, when I thought he was just being like really hard on me. And he was just raising two Black boys in a white neighborhood in Georgia. And we had no idea why he was so strict, and like always like had us always want to know where we were, always had us check. And it's like, he's not doing this for him. Like looking back, I know that now. Like he's not doing this for him. And, now I think what you said doesn't get talked about enough, like all the advantages that our kids have. And, the ability to get information immediately. And I remember listening to, as probably a YouTube video or whatever, but someone was talking about, they had asked Siri, or I'm not going to say her name because she's right next to me, or Google, who was the 12th president of the United States? And they spit it right out. And the guy was like, see, this is what our kids have. Our kids have immediate information. Like, why do we have them memorize who the presidents of the United States were when everything they need is like right there? Like we have the ability to teach these kids more than we ever knew. Like we have a chance to give them so much more complex information. Why are we keeping them at, hey, who was the vice president under, Thomas, under Abraham Lincoln, or what, things like that,
Yeah.
And I never
especially, and they can gravitate towards the subject matter that they are interested in, which obviously, my youngest is, his focus is challenge. He's on the spectrum, and mainstream regular school, but definitely out of the four of them, school is the biggest challenge for him. And I've often thought that, I'm like, I'm not going to stress about you memorizing all the state capitals.
Right.
Like, know how to find out. If you go to North Dakota and you want to know, you're going to, like, I know what you're going to, they have this stuff at their fingertips. But then if you get him on a topic that he is really interested in, he's going to be the smartest guy in the room on that topic. And we all want to spend time playing from our strengths. So I often think, like, if we can teach them to play to their strengths and focus on those areas, the things that are weaker tend to come up with the confidence.
My thought on this is, I've had this conversation with a lot of people about what we're teaching our kids, and we're in a great school system. I'm very blessed to be in a school system. It's unfortunate that school systems are based on property taxes, but that's another show for another whatever.
Yep.
But it would be really nice, I think, if there was a focus on the quote unquote, and I hate using the term soft skills, but they're called soft skills. But like a huge thing with me is public speaking. Absolutely. And just you and I speaking to each other on your show about topics we haven't talked about before, we've never spoken before, but both of us can have a conversation. I would like to put two 15-year-olds doing this right now and see who can do it without texting each other first, or without DMing somebody, or with and making eye contact while they do it. And I'd like to say these are things that most people will still need as they get older, but we know with remote work and, but even with us being on a video conference service, there's still the need to be able to articulate your feelings and listen correctly so you can respond the right way to what the person is asking. That's not taught in schools, like that public speaking, being the verbal, knowing verbal and audio cues and visual cues, like those type of things aren't really. The first public speaking class I took was as a sophomore in college. And like there's kids that get out of high school that are in high school that are going to interviews for summer jobs, and rarely, if any of them, have taken a public speaking course or how to just interview with somebody, how to talk to an adult. But all of them know the capitals of, the states. It's like, wait a second. And again, I'm not saying these things to be like, hey, I know better than the rest of the world. It's like there's things like you think about at 2 a.m. when you're up and you're like, why am I staring at my ceiling? And man, I wonder if the teacher even really asked how my kid was feeling after she fell and hurt her knee. Like, did she really understand? If, like, it's like one of those things. It's like, I wonder if we're just trying to move kids through the system, or if we're trying to actually build complete human beings.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, I mean, the difference, and I've always believed, and part of the reason I love these conversations is because I really do believe that teachers and coaches outside of parents are such game changers.
Yes.
And the more we can connect those conversations between, students or athletes, parents, and coaches or teachers, we can move a lot of mountains and the problems we see out there just in that little triangle. And but emotionally connected teachers and coaches, like I noticed how you remembered all of the names of the good coaches. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you remember the name, you remember the year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm still friends with my high school volleyball coach, which, she was probably the first person to teach me that I was tougher than I thought I was,
mm-hmm.
And as a pretty sensitive kid with athletic ability, but way too sensitive and timid and yet to have that person that can push you just a little and normalize that in someone that you trust.
Right.
Is so pivotal in an upbringing, and to also not always have it be coming from the parent, but I did notice you said, so you coach your girls.
I coach, so they both play soccer right now, and Aaliyah also plays basketball. I coach Aaliyah right now, in soccer and basketball, and I didn't want to at first. Like I wanted to be a dad and just watch and enjoy it. And the first year she played soccer, I helped out a little bit here and there, and one of the coaches couldn't make it, so I stepped in. And by the end of the season, I was on the bench, and so after that season, the coach is like, "Hey, do you want to just help me next season?" I was like, "Yeah, I really do. Like, I really do." So, and so but you're absolutely like, I know the connection I have with my youth coaches. Like my dad coached my brother and I through basketball as rec when we were 7 or 8. So he kind of left other coaches to coach us, as my brother and we sprouted up. Like, so every basketball coach near us was like, we want those 2 kids. Like, so, and then we started we actually started soccer first, and my parents didn't know much about soccer. So we always had another coach, but I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I was just going to say, you remember those coaches who literally just cared. Like they just cared. They never pushed you.
It's interesting, as a collegiate athlete, you can care. I mean, obviously you talked a little bit about your attitude towards sports, but you rose to a level that was very high in your sport. And I wonder, but you also have the perspective of coaching very young athletes. And I wonder if you have any advice out there for the parents who, maybe take their kids' young sports career too seriously, or, just ways that you've noticed that you can kind of keep it fun and see what comes from the kid rather than the parent, like through your coaching experience.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that, because my wife has to take our youngest one to her soccer games because I'm usually coaching the other one at that time. But for 2 of the games, I've been able to see her play it, and my wife is very like, I never saw this part of her. She's very excitable when her child is on the field, and she's telling her where to be and how to. She's telling the ref that the ball went off of this girl and not this girl. And it's like all the parents are like, girls down here. And I'm quiet. And, for the most part, I'm quiet. Sometimes I have to get on my youngest about her effort. But other than that, like, I don't try to tell them. I mean, it's 5v5 on a really small field. And I'm thinking to myself, like, the instructions we're giving these girls, we're putting them in positions to try to win this game. Like, no, be here so you can be ready for the ball and score. I mean, but it's like, why? Why are we giving them instructions? Like, we're not giving them technical instructions. We're not giving them like anything other than we want to see this 7 and 8-year-old team win. And winning means literally nothing right now. And there's people out there that cringe when I say that. And it's like, I'm telling you right now, in every aspect, in every sport, in every level of sport, winning should not be mentioned ever. And what I tell people, winning is just the byproduct of hard work and luck sometimes. Like, usually 9 times out of 10, the team with more talent wins. The team with the bigger, stronger, faster players wins, until you get to a collegiate or professional level where everyone is strong and athletic and skilled. Then you have to look at, well, what are the other factors? Coaching. Yeah, coaching can definitely factor in on that. But then you have effort.
Mm-hmm.
And at no point me telling my child where to be on the field, or me telling her, hey, get ready for our pass to has anything to do with effort. It has nothing to do with effort, and it has nothing to do with fun. Like, the reason I have my girls in sports is because, one, they both want to play sports, and two, they get to have fun. And, if there's like a 2A and a 2B, 2A might be fun, and 2B might be the fact that they're learning social skills.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I always said, yeah, even through club sports, as my kids were coming through, I was like, if they can just remember how to, separate the dark and the light jersey, make sure they get both of them to the tournament. And like,
exactly.
and I'm like, okay, we're making progress, right? Like,
you just gotta get the reversible,
jersey.
Get the reversible jerseys. Got to use those. But
yeah.
And it took me a while. I've been coaching for a long time. I started coaching in my 20s and I absolutely loved it. And it was a travel basketball team, and it was definitely a lot more hard. These boys like went at it, and it wasn't a rec team. But I've, of the almost 15 years I've coached, and I was just having this conversation with the other coach the other day. I think I've had 1 or 2 teams that have been like top level teams that have been like, hey, this team should be winning every game. That's fun. I get it. That's fun. Yeah. People want to win. But most of the teams I've coached have been, lower level or rec or mid-level teams, which, if they show up and the other team's best players there, then we're not going to win this game, like, unless lightning strikes and, whatever.
Right.
But that's where most coaches need to live. That's where we need to live. I told him, I said, I think I was put on this earth to show kids how to win and lose respectively. I think I was put on this earth to be able to show kids that regardless if you win or lose this game, there's a lesson to be learned. And I'm still going to love you. I'm still your coach. Your parents are still going to love you. Like, no trophy you win at 7 years old is going to like set you for life. I apologize. Like, I'm sorry. There's no lottery trophy out there that's like, oh, we won this tournament. We all get $1 million. Okay. No, there's none of that.
Right.
But what we can do is we can like really show the positive aspects of humanity as coaches. And we can show, the girls I coach, like, I want to be old and gray, and I want to hear about you at your wedding. Like, I want to be old and gray, and I want to see your kids. Like, I want to be the coach that's like, who you can call when you think no one else is going to listen.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's so many positive aspects of coaching. And if you look, it's sad nowadays that they have to send out email blasts about coaches yelling at referees.
Yeah.
Parents yelling at referees. And
Well,
And
yeah. And I mean,
yeah.
coaching is a thankless profession for the most part these days. I know so many great coaches, and these coaching conversations are among my absolute
Mm,
favorites because I really believe they're so pivotal and can really make such a
mm,
difference in kids' lives. But there's so many coaches out there that are ready to throw in the towel because
mm,
of the things that, it's not like they're making millions, and
yeah.
you give up so many hours, and it's usually, coaches are such passionate people, but there's only so much you can put up with,
Yeah.
and keeping this conversation positive, again, that's one of my motivations, because the other thing I loved about, when I read about all the things that you do, is that connection you make between mental and physical health
Mm,
is something, even coming through COVID and all of the challenges that we have, making that real connection and helping kids understand that moving is a part of their mental health, not just their physical health. And I'm wondering, how as a coach you help connect that for the younger generation, because it's so important.
it took me a long time to get here. It took me a really, and when I say a long time, like within the last, 12 to 18 months that I
Wow.
got here, that I figured out that I had to be intentional with both of them. And, I've gone through phases where I've been incredibly fit and just absolute, wreck upstairs. And I've been in places where I've been, in a really good headspace. And then I look down, it's like, why do I have my big pants on? Like, what happened, Mark? What happened? And, you know, with kids, as someone told me on one of my episodes, the last time I checked, most of us have brains in our heads, and those brains have feelings, and we need to work those as much as we need to work anything else. And with kids, especially when I grew up, it's, are you injured or are you hurt? And if you're hurt, like, come on, man, like, that's, whatever. um but they never took into account all the firsts that these kids are going through. Great example is one of the first basketball teams I coached was a bunch of fourth graders, and we got to the championship game of a tournament. We lost. Good game. We lost. Every one of the kids was crying. First time I'm coaching this team, and their two dads were my assistants, and I'm looking, and I have no idea what's going on. And I'm like, what's happening? And like, that's the first game those kids have ever lost. And I was like, oh, they don't know how to lose. Okay. All right. This is good. I mean, not good, but this is, I can
Yeah,
work with
that's
this.
a teachable moment
Yeah,
right there. That's good.
I got excited.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is, and, but so these kids are giving their all. They're spent. I got kids that are running for, 15, 20 minute wind sprints up and down. They get a break, go back in 2 minutes later, like wins. And people think kids don't get tired. Kids get tired. Like, don't get me wrong, they get tired.
Yeah.
And so they've exerted all this physical energy. And then it's like their brains have to realize they just lost. The world is ending. My parents don't love me. Coach is going to quit. I'm not going to get McDonald's. My ice cream, everything is done. And that's when you have to kind of bring them back down to life and say, hey, listen, what you did today was great. Like, don't let those numbers on the clock, on the scoreboard, tell you anything differently. Like, if there was something to be done, if there's something to work on, we're going to do it. That's why it's called a season. That's all we have, practice. Like, but that's when I was like, listen, win or lose, it's all about what you do during the game. And I think I had to tell him then. I remember such, like, one of the kids is, Jack Kuba, who plays ball at like Catholic University in DC. And just an absolute terror on the basketball. Like, this kid, he gave me the most headaches, and he fouled out of every game. I couldn't start him because he'd have 3 fouls in the first quarter. I told his dad that. His dad was like, you do what you're going to do. You're cool. And to see, like, his family still contact me, and me be able to, see him go play collegiate, basketball. But the thing I don't think enough coaches do, and this is something we can all learn from, is the practices don't have to include a ball and don't have to include movement. improvement all the time. Like, we're going to get there. We're going to get there. Just asking the girls like how their day was at school and listening to them talk.
Yeah.
And knowing that I had a great example last season. We had a defender on our team who's usually a rock. She's usually awesome and great. And one game, she just wasn't herself. And and again, I say wasn't her 8 years old, but she still wasn't energetic. She wasn't going after the ball. Something wasn't there. So, I mean, it's an 8-year-old soccer game. They scored on us, and I walked right to the field, onto the field, knelt down in front of her. The game stopped. Like, I don't care about anything. And I knelt down in front of him. I was like, hey, what's going on? Are you okay? Do you want to come out? No, I'm fine. I'm fine. I was like, are you sure? And like, she starts like tearing up and crying because like, I don't think she expected anybody to like ask her how she was feeling. Like, she expected people just to expect her to play hard. And I remember after the game, I talked to her mom. She's like, oh, did you dig into her? Did you get into her? Did you tell her what she needed to do? And I was like, no, I just asked her how she was doing and if she needed anything. And she was like, she kind of paused for a second. I was like, oh, that was very nice of you. And I was like, she's 8. Like, these are, again, I love these moments. Like, I don't want a child to cry on the field, but at the same time, I want her to know that an adult is listening to you. Adults tell kids what to do all the time. Coaches, we need to listen more to our players. They'll tell us.
I love that. Absolutely. Absolutely. There's pretty smart little athletes out there.
They are.
For
They're
sure.
A lot of them.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So one of the questions I just love to ask everybody that comes on my podcast, and I just thank you again so much for this time, but what is a piece of advice that you would give to your younger self?
Wow. Be prepared for a podcast that you're going to be on when you're 43. No.
You can take a minute.
Yeah. No, the advice I would give would literally be, you're enough. You literally are enough, because I cannot tell you how many days in my life where I just felt like I'm doing everything wrong. Like, I'm not a good person. Like, I shouldn't be here. Everyone's better than me. Like, I can't tell you how many tryouts I went to where I was like, okay, I'm not going to make this team. How many, girls I didn't talk to, how many friends I didn't make, how many times I just didn't put myself out there because I felt I wasn't worth it. Not that I wasn't good enough, but I just wasn't worth it. I'm not worth anybody else's time. I'm not worth my coach's time, my parents' time, my teacher's time. I'm not worth anybody. And I can't tell you how many questions I didn't ask, how many conversations I didn't start.
Yeah.
And now in my life, like, I make sure, like, when I'm at the gym and I see somebody who has a great physique, male or female, I'm like, I'll go up to, I'm like, hey, what's your nutrition? Like, what do you eat? What's your diet? Like, tell me about, like, I had a woman in there who had just a great back. I'm like, I'm working on my back. Can you help me? Like, I'm not missing these chances anymore. I'm not doing it because we're all worth it. Like, we're worth our time. We're worth the effort. We're worth everyone's respect. And I would tell every facet of Marc's life, 1, 2, 3, up to 43 years, you are absolutely 1,000% worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I love about that is you just converted, obviously you were really hard on yourself, and
yes,
you've converted being really hard on yourself to an immense level of growth, and through all of that challenge to become more self-aware. And I always say, like, I think self-awareness is the greatest gift that we can give to the next generation.
Absolutely.
And I hear that through your coaching. So this was just a really awesome conversation. And I want to know, where can people find you to connect? And tell us a little bit about your podcast real quick. And Relatively Normal.
Relatively Normal was a brainchild of a conversation I had with a therapist a few years ago, where I was having a really dark day, and I've told this story, especially on I think the first episode of the show, where I just wanted to be normal. I just wanted to be a normal human being, normal feelings, normal, not giving a, to the world.
Mhm.
And he was just like, hey, this is your normal. Like everyone lives their normal. This is it's relative. And I was like, oh, that, that's a crazy thing to say. So I'm like, I'll use that. And so you can go to Relatively Normal Podcast anywhere you listen to podcasts. And it's just, it's me doing my best to end the stigma on having the conversations about, mental health and mental awareness, and letting people know that everything affects our mental health, whether that be, a woman trying to make it through corporate America and finding that glass ceiling, whether it be a Black man in Georgia just trying to go get, go to the grocery store at 10 o'clock at night, whether it be a person interviewing for a job that's anxious about it. Like, let's have these conversations. Like, if your ankle is bothering you, you're going to put some ice on it. Why are you hiding that something's wrong or something's going on in your head? So that's on, I'm on Instagram and on Facebook. I'll just look up Relatively Normal. And then my fitness journey, which, really is starting to take off. You can just go to Paisant_fitness, working on my certification to be a personal trainer now. So it's, it's kind of weird posting my first like shirtless photo. Yeah. But now it's like, hey, you know what? You worked your tail off to do this. And for people who saw you at 321 pounds.
Oh, wow. There's a podcast in itself right there.
To see you at like 235 and actually have like abs is like, I want to motivate people. I want to inspire people. I want people to know that if I do it, you can do it, and we can help each other. We can motivate each other. And you doing what you're doing is doing that. And I want to thank you for this opportunity today. It's been absolutely amazing. This is a conversation that I've needed to have and wanted to have. And hopefully one day my girls will listen to this and say, you know what? My dad was pretty cool. I liked him. He was a good guy.
Definitely. Well, that definitely came through in this. I'm so glad that we did this. And I thank you again for your time. And I'm sure we'll connect again. I'll be listening to Relatively Normal, and I know you're having a ton of good conversations there. So thank you. And we'll connect again, I'm sure.
Thank you. This was awesome.
Yeah. Thank you so much for listening to What I Meant to Say. If you enjoyed this conversation, you know what to do. Subscribe, rate, review. And for more great content, courses, and lifestyle, go to BeBetterMedia.tv.